TOSSE.
Good afternoon, everyone. So the session today, I hope, will be a bit interactive, but I think it would be good to get a pulse of the room first. So in terms of job role, how many of you are supervisors where you work? Are you all with me? By a show of hands, because that's typically how you do it in the classroom, isn't it? How many of you are supervisors where you work? Team leader, you're a supervisor. Okay. How many are managers, middle managers? How many of you are teachers, so you're in the classroom with the students? Okay, I think I've named all the different tiers so far, and some people still haven't raised up their hand. So if you haven't raised up your hand, can you tell me what your role is? Fantastic. So I have a volunteer. Thank you, kind sir.
I think you did not mention some categories of people, like administrators and school owners. You didn't mention their group. You only mentioned supervisors, middle managers. You did not mention school owners, administrators, school leaders.
Thank you very much. So you see, because someone is participating, then he's pointed out something which is very important. Okay, so let's see the school. I don't like to use the word school owners. I think that's a bit pedestrian. School leaders. Do we have any school leaders in the room? Show of hands. School leaders, you actually founded and established the school. Fantastic. School administrators. Fantastic. That was me for 7 years. Fantastic. Okay. So, this particular subject is actually targeted at those who are making strategic decisions in their organization. So a school founder, an HR manager, a school administrator. There's also very important lessons to be learned for those in line management, so supervisors and middle managers, but it's really mainly targeted at those who are in a position to make a strategic contribution or those in a decision-making role. I guess other roles are represented here. It can be something that equips you for the future. So I think we'll look at it that way. Okay, so I thought it would be good to start off with some definitions. I think that's typically how we do it in class. We start with the lesson objectives, right? And typically at the top of the lesson objectives, if it's a new concept, it would typically be the definition of the concept, correct? Okay, so I thought we'd start with that. I'm not a teacher, so I'm just like feeling like an educator. Retention. Retention is the number of retained employees measured as a proportion of employees during a specified length of time. It looks like my slides have jumbled up a bit. Okay? So, staff retained within the organization. And typically, the time specified in terms of best practice is usually like an annual. When you're trying to do the data analysis, it would usually be based on a business year, which typically for education would be from September to August, right? So you would be looking at, well, we say August because that's technically the end of the year. The new year would start the next September. So within that session, you're looking at the number of staff that have been retained. And we're here talking about creating effective systems for retention, so it would be good to know what that means. Let's move. There's a contrast between retention and turnover. So when your retention rate is very low, it means that your employee turnover rate is high, which means the number of staff who leave an organization within a set period, and typically we would use the 1 year. Yeah? So if your retention rate is low, which means that the number of staff leaving your organization is increasing rapidly, it means that your turnover rate is very high. And I thought it would be good to look at when you are considering employee retention numbers, or you're considering employee turnover numbers, you also need to go granular. Granular meaning that you're not just looking at, okay, the number of staff that have left over the number of staff that are left in the, remaining in the organization. You're also looking at their mode of exit. And it's very important to do that in this data analysis, because you want to look at, did they leave because of a redundancy? In the case of a redundancy, it was not voluntary. The staff didn't leave because they wanted to leave. They left because the economic circumstances of your organization have made it impossible to stay. So at that time, their job no longer exists. So they didn't leave because they wanted to leave. They left because of economic circumstances of your organization, and you had to ease them out. So in terms of turnover, if you're then trying to determine or diagnose causes for people leaving, that might not be a number you count in terms of your ability to retain your staff, because these were circumstances that were beyond your control. Retirement is another one. You already know that's coming. So that is a planned exit in advance. So you may then not think, okay, you may not then count them in terms of trying to diagnose the cause for turnover. Termination and resignation, of course, resignation is voluntary, and resignation is one of the red flags in terms of determining retention and determining turnover. Termination is a red flag. Of course, termination in that case, it was an involuntary exit of the staff. However, you would then look at the reasons for it. Things like, was it even a right recruitment fit from the beginning? Those are the things you will analyze to determine if you need to be looking at other areas to shore up the bleeding of staff. Okay? So I thought it would be good to just mention these things as a backdrop as we progress on the discussion. And this is what the Chartered Institute of Personnel Development says. Employers should monitor employee turnover and understand how it affects their organization's performance and ability to achieve its strategic goals. Lengthy rehire lead times. What that simply means is, if a staff leaves today, with some job roles, it might be challenging to find a replacement within a short period. So these are considerations. There's also competing opportunities and alternative job roles for educators. Now we have EdTech is a burgeoning sector right now. So those who are actually trained in education have options of working in EdTech, have options of working as program managers, have options of working in NGOs. So for some people, the classroom does not look as attractive. Working in a school does not look as attractive because there are other opportunities out there. There's also changing attitudes towards work. A lot of us are now very particular about our mental health. A lot of us, our priorities have changed in terms of what we want out of life. I know that for a lot of us, if we look at March 2020 and we look at March 2021, for a lot of us, there's a shift in what we're looking for out of life. Some people are prioritizing family time more. Some educators are prioritizing their well-being and have decided that education is not for them. They'd rather do something else. Okay? Another key thing, and I think this is something that we need to determine for the future, we are now having a much younger demography of staff coming into our schools. So prior to now, our top teachers were the baby boomers. Our top non-academic staff were the baby boomers. Now the baby boomers are getting older, and we're having a younger crop of Gen Zs and millennials coming in. Any Gen Z or millennials in the room? Any Gen Z or millennials in the room? Fantastic. So correct me if I'm wrong when I begin the description. I know that to a large extent it may be a generalized statement or a stereotype, but what's your name? My name is Yemisi. So correct me if I'm wrong. So with Gen Zs and millennials, and please, I've already issued the disclaimer. I know it's probably a general statement, some aspects stereotypical, but with Gen Z and millennials, they are very particular about social issues. So for them to stay in a school, they want to see some higher purpose. They want to see some impact for community, for sustainable living. Gen Z and millennials also, in terms of loyalty, their loyalty is more to themselves, their dream, their purpose. And this is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Now, the reason why I'm taking time to mention some of these attributes is so that we are mindful that the things we used to do to some of the baby boomers, and they would say, well, I know I've got to work and feed my family. You know that statement. I know I've got to work and feed my family. With some Gen Zs and millennials, that is not a defining factor. So if they're not seeing purpose, they're not seeing social impact, they're not seeing a direction for themselves, they're out the door. And if you're not mindful of the rationale or the mindset, it means that you will be bleeding this demographic of staff. So these are things to be mindful of. Why is employee retention critical? So I said why it is something we need to consider. I've highlighted some market factors and considerations for education in particular. Not just generally, but for education in particular. But now, why should we even bother about it? Okay, despite what Yemisi has said about the market forces and about what obtains, why should we seriously be thinking about how to boost our employee retention? Number one, there's a high cost for when somebody leaves. For when an employee leaves, there's a cost for it. Not just the cost of rehire, which is high because I do recruitment, and I know what's involved in getting a new staff in. There's the time. There's also the cost of the investment that has gone. So when an employee leaves, you either see a negative or a positive. Now, a positive is that they have given so much to the organization, but the negative is that they're taking some of that intellectual property out. We're going to talk a bit about how that shouldn't really be a problem, but that is a concern. And for organizations who are not ready, who are not prepared, who don't plan, that will be a problem. Another factor, negative impact of losing staff, losing employees, losing team members, productivity losses and workflow interruptions. So if a staff member leaves today and you can't fill that position until 1 month later, what happens in that 1 month? It means that an office is unstaffed. It means that a classroom is unstaffed. It automatically means that somebody else might be trying to carry that extra load, but it's not going to be the same. The output won't be the same. So productivity is going to go down. Instability, workflow interruptions, which means that whatever it is that person was handling at that time, especially if he didn't plan for their exit, is going to remain undone for a while, or it's going to be problematic. So this is where the learning of students can actually be interrupted, and that is an event that we cannot afford to happen within the classroom. Service quality, of course, is going to go down. Imagine an administrator stepping out, a teacher stepping out from their role. It means that a service is now no longer being delivered, or it's not being delivered at optimal level. Loss of expertise, I mentioned that earlier. That person is carrying intellectual property, is carrying some sort of legacy, which they are now removing from your organization and going to plant elsewhere. Loss of business opportunities. Because of that lack of capacity and that break in that time when the employee has left, it could be that there's a contract, there's an additional class you were going to open. It could be there was an additional service you were going to offer, maybe like the exam class, or some extracurricular activities that could not take place, which means that there's already a loss of additional revenue. Okay? Administrative problems. I don't think I need to explain this. This is when your parents sometimes will be calling, maybe nobody will be picking up the phone because the receptionist is no longer there, and then maybe the administrator is trying to fill in for the receptionist at the same time as, and then your parents start to see cracks and they start to complain. That's something we don't want. That's why we are here talking about retention. Disruption of social and communication networks. That just simply means there was a bond. Hopefully, if that person was obviously a great employee or team member, it means that there was a bond that was created within a team that has now been broken. That's why you find sometimes that when a staff member leaves, very quickly after some will follow. Because they formed a team, they formed a bond, they formed a connection. It's that one way you have an issue in class, you just run to your bestie, your school bestie, and you say, see what happened. And then you don't have that school bestie anymore. And that bestie says, where I am, I'm having fun. The next thing, the other person leaves. So that cohesion and that bond that made it easier for certain things to be done because they understood each other, they knew what each other's strengths were, that is immediately broken when one person in that puzzle is pulled out. Job satisfaction, like I mentioned, the next thing is, some people will say, it seems like it's rosy out there. That's why the person went, and then they follow. Now, this one is a big one if you're in a leadership position, the impact on the image of your organization. So I work with schools, I support schools in consulting, but we also provide recruitment services. There's some, so part of what I do is, we put out ads, but I also headhunt. So I don't know if any of you are here that have reached out to you on LinkedIn before, but I headhunt as well, because that's part of my remit. I look for talent for schools. And you call some people, and they are very arrogant. It's okay, they are very, I know my worth, and it's like, they are not chasing me from where I am, I'm enjoying myself, Now, that's a positive brand image of the school. But there's also the negative. When I say to them, I'm recruiting for this particular school, they say no. You can find, I'm okay, I don't mind moving, but not to that school. Now, why would they say not to that school? Can somebody help me?
Already they have an idea of what the school look like and how the management function. Like one of my friends used to say, that school, they are too much. So already even if they call you, any amount they were willing to offer, nobody will come.
Thank you very much. So yes, some schools have a bad brand image, and that's where some school owners, school leaders, I promise myself I won't use that word, and management staff come in. So I thought it would be good to show this. We had mentioned it earlier, voluntary and involuntary. Yeah? And as a senior leader, you have to be very mindful of your push and pull factors. Now, the pull factor is there's something outside the organization that is attracting them, that is saying, this is a much better opportunity for me. There's the push. The push is because they are seeking an alternative future because they are dissatisfied with something present in your organization. As a school leader, your job is to mitigate the push factors. You mitigate the push factors, you solve the push factors, and you work on increasing added value to reduce the pull. You have to solve the push factors, but there's nothing you don't have control over the pull because it's external. But what you have control over is to create value that will minimize the effect of the pull, where the staff member will then be weighing their options and may then consider remaining. Okay? So let's move. Typical top reasons for exit. I know many of you will say that the number one reason is what? Number one reason is what? I do know that it is a critical factor in why some staff may exit an organization. However, based on research, my research, and also global research, that is not usually number one. So, number one are usually a lot of other soft reasons. But when they then look at the compensation, and they think, really? For this? That's where the compensation comes in. It's like, for this, I'm going to have to take this. But it is a critical factor. I've left it there, but I want us to be mindful that it is not the primary factor in a lot of instances. So I don't want us to cop out and always say it's money, it's money, it's money. Because even as leaders, I think it tends to make us lazy in terms of creating value for staff. Because we automatically say it's money, then we want to increase the money. Oh, we can't increase the money because of our financial circumstance, and that's the end. No, I want us to think out of the box today. I want us to put money out of the equation first and then think about other ways that we can add value. So I put it there so that we can move past it and then move on to meatier things. Okay? Let's look at the second one, lack of recognition. Does this resonate with anybody here? Where you probably in the past, I have in the past as well, felt I'm a hard worker, I'm giving my best, but I'm not being recognized for it. Nobody is saying, Yemisi, we saw you did that. Oh, Yemisi, that thing you did. Oh, wow, it helped us. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you is like an Oscar award. Thank you is like that golden buzzer in AGT. Is like that, the chair turning round in the voice. Those two words, thank you, means a lot. We are, after all human. Are we not? We are. Human beings yearn to be recognized, to be seen, to be valued. Another top reason for exit, limited career advancement opportunity. This is where your staff members cannot see room for growth. They can't see room for advancement. I think a common word we will say is promotion, but it's not just about promotion. It's about recognizing that they have value and then giving them an opportunity to show it. Yeah? So they don't see, so for instance, you come into a school and with some people, they already have their plan or their goals, some short, some medium, some long term, but typically a lot of people I interview as educators, what are your long-term goals? And immediately they're saying to me they would like to be a principal one day, they would like to be a head of admin and HR, or they would like to be, they would like to run their own school one day. These are three top things. When I ask, what are your long-term goals? I typically hear these three. What that that means is when you're getting someone like that in your organization, it means that you need to feed that goal. You need to feed it. I know you're thinking to yourself, really? I have so many other things on my plate. Really, I have to pander to each employee's whims. Not their whims, but their legitimate career aspirations. That is your role as a leader and a manager. Is how you are able to bring out the potential of your team members. That's part of your job. Now, you may not necessarily be doing it yourself, but you need to create a framework where that is happening, and where your line managers are doing it, and where they are measured on it. Your line managers need to be measured on how much they are able to groom and bring out the potential in their staff members. That is a critical performance appraisal measurement. Because if they cannot, then they should not have that position, manager, supervisor. What they are supposed to do, especially if they are key part of the organization, is they need to clone themselves. By the time they are done 2 years, 3 years, they should have made 3 of themselves already. And what that does is it makes their work a lot easier. They won't be doing as much. So, typical reasons for exit as well is discontent with organizational culture. I know there's a word that we use a lot now, toxic environment. Does that word resonate with any one of us? Can somebody help us to define the word toxic environment in your own words? A toxic environment doesn't happen overnight. A toxic environment is a sign of poor leadership, because it is the head, is the tone that's set by the head that trickles down. So it could be the tone at the top is fine, but the poor leadership in it is that you haven't created the framework for it to trickle down. Is there any reason why a work environment should be destabilizing? We have a lot to deal with already. Why then go into somewhere every day and get paid to be tortured in your mind daily? School leaders, we must remember that our team are people first. They are humans first. That thing where you say, when you get to the school gate, leave your... What did they say? Because I don't say that. Drop your problem at the school gate. That is downright disrespectful. It is disrespectful, and it is also... You're feeling yourself alive. How do you divorce yourself from your emotions? How? As in, do you bring it out of your chest? You drop it at the school gates. Then you enter. Then when you are leaving at the end, you carry it and put it back. You're made up of a whole lot of things. And our duty as school leaders is to recognize that our people they have different components to them. And we have no other choice, if we want to get the best out of them, to actually take our time to know them and create a safe working environment. Safety doesn't just mean there's no electric wires on the floor or something, or there's no water source. It also means safe for mental health. So this is really, really important. Okay? So discontent with organizational culture just means it's probably a toxic environment, sense of belonging, there's no connection, there's no feeling like you're all working together as a team, working towards a common goal. Top reason for exit, we've mentioned already, overstressed or overworked. One thing I always used to say when I used to run a school, I would say to my director when she says, oh, there's a new initiative and she wants the teaching staff or the staff to do something. And I say, oh, that's great. This sounds absolutely fantastic. I'm all for it. Ma'am, what are you taking out? If you are introducing something new, you have to take something out. Because they weren't sitting about on their They weren't sitting around doing nothing to begin with. They were already very busy. So if you're going to add something, it means that you are then looking at rebalancing the workload. Poor work-life balance, another reason why some people leave, because they don't have time for themselves. They feel disengaged. Disengaged means that it could mean a few things. It just means that it could mean that the work doesn't have meaning for them anymore. It doesn't have meaning. It's like, why am I even still here? They don't feel a sense of purpose anymore. You could also feel that they are underutilized. There's so much they want to do, there's so much in them, and the work being given either doesn't connect with their strengths, or it doesn't excite them. And I'm sure you're thinking to yourself as a leader, why should we give them work that excites them? Let's give them work that excites them, because that's the whole idea. You recruited them to fill in a void. So let's give them more and more of that thing that they were actually hired to do. And a crucial one, and I've left it as the last one, line manager. It says people don't leave bad jobs. Have we heard that before? People don't leave bad jobs. They leave what? Not always, but that is actually a very important factor. Some people will actually want to be in that school environment. They love what they do, but they just have a really horrible relationship with their boss who makes things really difficult for them. So they might leave. With some bosses, it might mean there's a lack of trust. There's a lot of micromanaging, which means that micromanaging simply means your boss is telling you on a daily basis you are not capable. The way it's supposed to work is, I'm your manager, I train you, I equip you, I create checkpoints for measuring your performance, but I let you go do the work. If I don't let you go do the work on your own, I won't know your potential or your ability. But if I continue hovering over you and checking every little tiny detail, what it means is, I actually don't believe in you, and actually don't trust you. And that can be quite demoralizing. Another area is change in personal circumstances. And this is something that sometimes we can't do anything about, but sometimes we can. So change in personal circumstances, a staff member, team member gets married, and priorities have changed. And it could happen to both, either gender. A female or male team member has a child, and their priorities change. Or there's a death in the family, maybe the death of a breadwinner, and they're having to do something else. So with some of this, you can't change it, and your role as a manager is to make the transition seamless and easy for them to exit. But with some, you can make adjustments. So for instance, I heard in the room in the last session about how a school leader, what they do is that for every staff member, the play group is free. So once you have a child, if you want to return to work, either you're the female team member who's actually had the baby, or you're a male team member and you have a new baby. The male team member can actually bring the baby to school, to play group for free. Now that is a school that's thinking about staff members' personal circumstances, and they're ready to meet the staff member halfway. Yeah, so these are things that we could actually begin to think about doing. Okay? Another reason, I didn't note it on this, but discrimination. And that doesn't mean like racial bias or stuff like that. There's this thing. Sir, you've always been an administrator, right? Me too, I was always an administrator. But I always noticed this distinction between academic staff and non-academic staff. Academic staff were always favored. They were the ones who always got the gifts from the parents and everything. And when you talk about staff members, they always use that word teachers, like the other staff don't exist. Did you notice that? Yeah. It might seem like a ridiculous thing, right? Like it doesn't mean anything, but I know how I felt. And I thought to myself, my job is ensuring that the school operations are running optimally for teachers to deliver learning. Without my job, learning would not continue. However, in terms of recognition, so I'm just giving an example. Of course, I was recognized in my own school, but I'm just giving an example of how some staff members may feel like they're not important. So something we need to be mindful of. You know, the security men, the receptionists, the cleaners. You know, let's think about it. Because if they're not there, something will not be right. You know, so let's be conscious of it. Okay? And then the last one, and I left this the last because even though this is important, I don't think it's the most important thing we need to worry about. The better pull. So other opportunities outside. I don't think we need to be hung up on that. I think it's good to use it for benchmarking. So you want to know what salaries are being offered in all the schools. You want to know what kind of perks are being offered. You want to know what kind of employee initiatives. It's very good for benchmarking. Is there any HR professional in the room? Any HR professional in the room? Okay, but your job, HR, core HR, or you do admin and HR comes under your purview? Both. Fantastic. So these are some things you need to do. You actually need to do your benchmarking and see what's out there. But I don't want us to be hung up on that. I want us to be more hung up on the push factors because those are totally within our control. Okay? And I believe that if we work on our push factors more, those things that are making our staff so dissatisfied that they want to leave, it will mitigate the pull factor. Okay? So let's go to, now that we've laid the foundation really, let's go to the title of the session today, which was, who can remember the title? Let's even see whether everybody's awake. You have it there in your program. That's why you know. No. Yeah, tell me. You may not pay that much. It depends on your peculiar organization. It depends on the reasons why. You may dwell on those and they could add to your turnover rate, or you can discount them depending on what it is. So I just included the different types so that in your data analysis you can bear that in mind and you can focus on what is relevant to your school organization and then what is relevant. Also job roles. It could be that contract roles or NYSC, we already know they have a fixed time with you and they would need to leave. Okay? So, you've done your calculation for your employee retention rate, you've done your calculation for your employee turnover rate. Then we move to diagnosing causes, and which I said you obviously need to look at involuntary, voluntary exit, you need to look at avoidable and unavoidable exit. And you're asking yourself this big question, why are employees leaving? And that analysis should help you. So when your staff leave, do you do exit interviews? Sometimes, okay, but not all. But I'm sure you know that the exit interview information, if they actually tell you the real reason.
Sometimes it depends on circumstances.
Yeah, I know. But that data is vital. And if you don't do it, it is something that you need to do. It is gold information if you can actually get the truth from your exiting employees, because it gives you data to work with, real data to work with. Sometimes they may not want to talk to you, and that's fine. You can actually, if it's that important to you to know, and I think it should, you can outsource it. They may feel better talking to somebody who is neutral. Another thing you can also do, diagnose causes, is that you can deploy an employee feedback survey. I don't know, how many of us do that in our schools? Employee survey. You do that in your school, fantastic. Anyone else? How often do you do it? Every session. That's good. Fantastic. And I'm sure when you do it, is it anonymous? Okay.
To see the area where the graph is high, and we know that that's an area we really need to work on. We will look at the graph. Sometimes a particular one is low, another one is very, very high, and you know that this is where we have problem and we need to adjust as managers.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And that's exactly why you need to do it, because it gives you valuable intel. So exit interview information, when you're diagnosing your causes, it gives you vital information that you can use to find out why your employees are leaving. Then who is leaving is also important. Not just why, but who. Because you might pick up a trend in certain job roles, and then it might give you an indication as to where the problem might be. It could also give you an indication as to a gap in line management. Because if only a particular team are exiting, what's the common trend with that team? Is one manager, right? One supervisor. It could also give you an indication as to maybe that particular group, maybe they don't have work tools, or they don't have what they need to work. So you also need to look at who is leaving. Then are employees from a particular team, like I mentioned, or demographic group. So is it gender specific, the exit? Is it younger people, older people? You know, you just need to look at that, and that would help to give your data. Explore a range of solutions, that's our next thing. So what you've done now is you've done your turnover rate, your retention rate, you've analyzed the data, it's giving you some useful intelligence, and then you're deciding to deploy. To be honest, I had like 4 pages of possible solutions, but I did not put it in here because I don't want us to approach this in our schools with a closed mind. So this is not cut and paste, my people. This is just to help our discussion, to open your mind to see that there are other possibilities and there are solutions that we can bring, but every solution has to be bespoke. It is after diagnosing your causes, analyzing your data, you bring out the issues, and then you begin to address them one by one. So some of these solutions may not even solve your issue. And I want you to know that. These are just for discussion purposes only, just to broaden our minds to see that there are options that we can employ. So my top one there, and that will always be my top one as a people management professional: humanity first. Your employees, your team members are human first. Before they are an administrator, before they are a class teacher, before they are a subject teacher, before they are a member of the cooking team, before they are a security guard, they are a human being first. Retention is not about money. Retention is about the human value that you place on your team members and how you treat them as people. If you place value and you treat them as people, the remuneration bit will come in anyway. So our primary goal as school leaders is to first identify, well, not identify, you already know, but it's to place first and foremost that your team members are humans first, they are people first. So you know that one where you say, we just do the best we can. As a school leader, that is not acceptable. When they have issues, they complain, and their complaint is actually legitimate, and you say, you remember that we're doing it for the children. I hear that, and that is not acceptable either. You cannot discount the value of a human life because of another human, because that's what you're doing. You're discounting that employee's humanity, that their humanity can be suppressed because of another human. No, we have to be able to create that balance. So recognize that they're human first. And like I said, what I would typically ask when I used to run a school is, if we're adding this, what are we taking off? Because if we recognize that they're human beings, then we recognize that they have a breaking point. Don't we? Second thing, some of the solutions we can use to mitigate the push factors. We can start from our onboarding experience and the recruitment process. Now, if sometimes you find in your exit interviews or after somebody started working, you realize that there was an error in recruitment in terms of the person's specification, in terms of the personality, the attitude. Now, it may not be that they're a bad person, but it could be that they're not the right person for that organization. How do you design your recruitment process in a way that it will screen out those that you feel may not be a good fit for your organization? So something to think about. Excellent onboarding experience. I cannot stress enough the importance of how people come into the organization. So first of all, there's the brand, the brand, employer brand thing, where you need to portray your organizational culture in an ideal way. Then there's also the part about when they come in. So imagine staff members coming in, they come in on their first day. By the time they get to reception, and then somebody will say to them, "Oh, I didn't even know you were coming." First day at work, they're not being expected by maybe the line manager or even the receptionist. I mean, how does a new staff member resume? How does a new staff member resume in an organization? A name, and then I would say to all the staff members, if you see them in the hallway, welcome them nicely. Now, imagine the difference between that and getting to the reception and they say, "Oh, you didn't know you were coming." Or you resume and you have no work tools. You're supposed to be working with a laptop, you don't have a laptop, you don't have a phone, or certain key things to do your job. And it's not like we did not know that employee was resuming that day. So onboarding experience is really key. Strategic HR function, this is really just saying that HR needs to be able to support the organization. So with HR staff, well, school leaders, how many of your HR staff have met with you already last week to ask what you're going to do about cost of living adjustment? Have any of your HR staff come to look for you to have a discussion about cost of living adjustment? Any one of you? If they have not done that, then they are not doing their job. Your HR function is supposed to feel the pulse of the people and give you information that is necessary for you to keep managing them appropriately. So where there is a lack of a strategic HR function, you're going to have chat issues because it means that your people management is not going to be addressed at all. Okay? So these are things you need to look at. Strong line manager relationships, I mentioned that earlier. The people that are responsible for operationalizing people management are the line managers. If you don't have strong line managers, supervisors, managers, it means that your people are going to be dissatisfied. They're going to have issues. Line managers are supposed to be coaches. They're supposed to be mentors. They're supposed to be people that sit with that staff member and get to know them intimately well. That's their job. To know that staff member so intimately well, they're able to leverage on their potential and they're able to look out for them. They're able to take care of them. They're able to chart their career journey. Okay? Sorry, I can't see. Business leaders' impact, also very important. Staff are looking up to you as the leader of the organization and wanting to see that you are mirroring the kind of behaviors or the kind of expectations that they would love to see. Okay? Integrity and trust. Is your school staff handbook saying one thing and your practices are saying the other? What that is called is called deception. Where your school policies are saying one thing, or you said one thing in the recruitment process and you're doing something different, that is deception. And we must stand for integrity and trust. Very, very important. Career development, very important, and this has to be personalized. You can't have the same track for every staff member because they have different potential skills, knowledge, and they also have different aspirations. So it could be that you might need to personalize or tailor their own career path in a very different way from somebody else doing the same job. Because this is the only way they feel that they have an opportunity to grow in the organization. Tailored compensation just really means let's think out of the box. It's not just always about money. For that person who has their child enrolled in that playgroup for free, like I mentioned earlier, you think they'll leave and within that 2 years they will take for that child to move on to preschool? Very unlikely. Because if they leave that job, they're going to go and pay somewhere else. So let's think about personalized compensation, how we can tailor it to meet the needs of our different demographic. Remember, you need to think about what is different for each age, the different groups. Baby boomers, Gen Zs, millennials, it will be different, okay? Employee wellness, we touched on it earlier. We need to be very interested in their well-being. We need to look for ways to reduce the stress and reduce the overwork. And of course, organizational culture, let's build a collegial and connecting kind of atmosphere in our organizations where our staff members look forward to coming to work. Okay? So I just mentioned a few tools that we can use. As I was mentioning the impact, the causes, and the tools, I hope we have started to think about which ones we feel we can. First of all, we were sort of mentally auditing our organizations and thinking about things that we want to change. I'd like to also think that we're also thinking, okay, this thing, an issue that we have in our organization, this could be some of the solutions that we can use to solve them. I hope we were. It doesn't look like anybody. Okay, there's a question over there.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, thank you very much. You said something about staff retention, yes. But it is not all schools that can try all possible best to retain or do everything to retain staff. You know, this, our job is a missionary job. What you can condone, in some schools they cannot do that. In times of welfare packages, some big schools are doing it. While other schools, let me say intermediate schools, they are trying. But if my colleague or a subordinate sees another school that pays just ₦1 higher than the salary, tomorrow we will not report. And for you to place the statistics as we want to say that, oh, exit information is very difficult because there are some false information the person will give you that probably is traveling out, is something, or he wants to stand up for this or how. But in terms of productivity, in terms of productivity, every business owner or school owner, that is number one thing. If you are not productive or diminishing return is setting in, forget. It's either they give you a particular term or condition. Now, what can you advise? Not only the school owners, but the managers. When you are trying to manage, but the productivity is going down, we cannot, like for example, me, I cannot manage more than, because I will tell you that this is my expectation. My Oga is expecting something from me. He doesn't have issues with you. They have issues with me, and this is what I'm expecting from you. And you are not discharging it according, rightly. What else do you think we can do, ma'am? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. Actually, there are a few dimensions to it. I think one of the main things is what I mean about the line manager, the place the line manager plays in the life of that staff within the organization. I'm wondering, and I'm not saying that you're not doing that, sir, but one of the things that I think is important to look at is how well does the line manager know the staff member? Does the line manager understand their personal circumstances if they choose to share? Because sometimes a dip in performance or productivity could be because of some things outside of the workplace. So that's one thing to be mindful of. The second thing to be mindful of is, are there clear instructions, clear documented instructions? Sometimes, the last survey I did, one of the things that came up was that the line managers do not give clear instructions. So the staff members are not even sure about what they need to do. Okay? That's another thing. Then performance management as well. Do you assign the tasks and then over a period of time, do you have check-ins with the staff? Sometimes staff don't know what to do. And I'm not quite sure about this psyche we have in this environment. People don't like asking questions. I don't know why. It's something I find, and I find it very frustrating. you don't know what you're being asked to do. It's not clear to you, but you don't ask questions. I don't know. Some people I think it's arrogance or pride. Some people I think it's because they don't want to appear like they're not competent. But it then counterproductive because you then do it the wrong way and then it blows up and it's worse than asking the question. So I'm thinking that you might want to try a few of those things and see if there's maybe something you might be missing. I'm not saying that a staff who isn't productive and who is not performing should remain. I'm just saying that is there something that we can do to sort of improve the performance if we look closely at other factors that we may not have looked at. Another thing is as well is that where their strength is? Could they be mismatched in terms of their job and their strength? But we won't know this unless as a line manager we actually know our staff intimately well. So that's just something that I think maybe you want to consider. Okay, thank you, sir. Any other questions?